Jonathan, this is a recording, and I'm just going to run through a bunch of answers that have been kind of stacking up here that I haven't got to yet, so I'm going to cover a bunch of different topics. So this one here is from someone that is, you can see the email on your screen here. Basically, they have a part-time business for 3 years now, and in March they're going to be jumping out full-time. And most of their business is set up for commercial equipment, hand tools and such. And they've done most of the work on themselves in the past, and they've done it on a part-time basis. And so when they do use labor, they usually pick up a laborer. So the question is, how do they find people? And how do they find employees? And how do they get out of the field? So my experience on this has been that finding people is always probably the number one biggest challenge in the business, and it's especially difficult in the very beginning, especially if you are only English speaking and you're hiring a good number of Spanish workers. Then that makes it a little bit more challenging. So from my perspective, what I've observed and what I've experienced over time is that if you can find a couple people up front that are good, and they're probably not going to be the first couple people you hire, they can eventually help you find a few more people. Now, you've got to be more aggressive than that. So I'll give you an example of being aggressive. So I used to be involved in a company where we would go basically into other states and take over properties that we would clean. So this isn't a lawn care example. And we would go into those states and we would run advertisements for cleaning in those areas. And then we would have those people call a phone number and they'd meet us at the property that we're going to clean. We'd have way more people than we need. And then we would work with them that night for a couple nights, figure out who the good ones were, and ultimately keep those people and essentially hire those and let the rest go. Well, to find those people, we do everything from running advertisements in the penny saver in the local market to running newspaper ads, which usually the newspaper ads weren't the best, to going to Walmart and asking people if they wanted jobs, to going to McDonald's and saying, hey, do you have any friends? You know, the guys behind the counter, do you know anybody that needs a job? The idea was that we were flying into, we're in Texas and we're flying into New York, or we're flying into wherever, Arkansas or Portland, Oregon, or some city in California that we have no presence in, and we're moving in there for the very first time. We need to hire people. We need to hire them, like 10 of them in days. And so to do so, we'd get aggressive and we'd just start asking everybody in town, do you know anybody that's looking for a job? And so that was cleaning. That was an example, but that's kind of how you've got to think about this, in my opinion, when you're getting started here. Is you're going to go through a bunch of people before you find a couple good ones, and then you're going to end up finding a couple good ones, and you're going to be disappointed because you thought they were going to be great, and they kind of fizzle out on you. So that's just part of the process. And so I gave the example of being aggressive and being creative because that's really what's involved here. And I do really believe in hiring legal labor. However, the reality of the situation is you got to do what you got to do in the beginning. And so I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to simply talk about finding people, and you can decide how it's best to run your business. And obviously, when you're young in business, you cut corners and you do things you wouldn't do as your business matures. That's just the reality of it. No matter what anybody says, that's how it works. And as your business grows, you start to shift your mindset from surviving and getting by and making it and just making sure the business is going to make it, to protecting this business that you've built, stabilizing it, turning it into something real, and building a team around you so that you build a long-term stream of revenue. So the mindset does change. And so, again, the reality of what is happening at the beginning of the business is all about survival. You're not necessarily, the other thing here in reading your message, and I may be misunderstanding it, but I don't think your initial few hires necessarily should be looked at as the people that are going to eventually run your company. That's probably not going to be the case. If that happens, you were just very fortunate that it happened to turn out that way. But the reality of it is the first several people you hire are about just simply putting together good maintenance crews or install crews out in the field, but they're not about becoming the future management of your company. That happens later. And so also another reality of getting out of the field is I am a big proponent of not working in the field and getting out as quickly as you can. However, again, the reality of it is it costs money to do that. And it's in some sense easier said than done. But now I don't want to give you an out and say, well, take your time, take a couple years, because you should attempt to do this as quickly as possible. But at the same time, again, the reality of it is you may think you have found that guy, and then he fizzles on you after a couple months, and you've got to really get more heavily involved in getting the work done until you get the next guy trained up, and then you're kind of back out of the field again, or at least back out of it part-time. So your initial goal should very much be getting out of the field at least on a part-time basis. So this doesn't have to be an all or nothing scenario. What if you can get out of the field 25% of the time so you can work on marketing and growing and selling, and then eventually 50% of the time, and eventually 75% of the time? Maybe it takes you 2 years to get nearly 100% out of the property or out of the field, or maybe you're never completely out. You're still managing large projects and you're still doing estimates and dealing with clients, but in terms of doing the actual work, you should have a plan to phase yourself out. If you can get out immediately, great, but at least phase yourself out. And so as you bring on people, you may have, again, a few that fizzle, and so you may have to jump back in temporarily. Well, that's just part of the process. As you build the company, and one of the reasons it's so critical to build a real company and actually get a lot of business is because the more business you have, the more people you hire, which means the more backup you have. If you don't ever build a very decent-sized operation, then you never have very many levels below you of people. So if you've got one crew and the foreman breaks his leg, you're screwed. But if you've got 4 crews and one guy gets hurt, you've probably got 10, 12, 14 people in your organization. Hopefully one of those guys that was working on a crew can step up and drive a truck. And so simply by building the business, you start to build some level of protection, backup layers into the business. So now to hiring these people, I gave the example of being creative. Well, and being almost in a situation of being desperate. What would you do if you were, you flew into Cincinnati tomorrow and you had to put together a crew? That's how you think about it. That's what we had to do in the cleaning business. We won these big contracts, and then we had to staff them, and we had to do it immediately. And then we had to have somebody in that city for a while, and they had to then get back on a plane and leave it and know that that crew was going to keep cleaning properly with periodic supervision, but not constant supervision. Well, again, the examples were we went and asked people if they needed jobs at McDonald's, at Walmart. We would just literally ask people working there, do you know anybody that needs a job? We'd run advertisements. We could go to a janitor supply store and say, hey, do you guys know anybody that's looking for work? Because who buys from a janitor supply store? Other guys in the janitorial business. So, and other employees of other companies. Well, same idea in lawn care. Is there a chemical vendor? Is there an equipment vendor that you can say, hey, do you guys know anybody that's looking for work? They can lead you possibly to some people, not always, but you do everything you can. Then think about, where do the guys that you're looking to hire hang out? Are they at a convenience store? Is there an area in town where they tend to hang out at a convenience store? Or is there a apartment complex? Is there a local church in the area that you can find out if there's people in the church that are looking for work? There's lots of possibilities if you start thinking about it creatively. But dry cleaners, apartment complexes, convenience stores, you can hang up things on the walls looking for work. There's just a bunch of options like that. And then once you find 1 or 2 people, you find out where they hang out. You ask them, where are other people like yourself? Where do you know anybody else that needs work? And it's a process. That's exactly how you do it. And then slowly you start to build a network of people, and really you always keep your eye out. So for example, maybe you don't need somebody now, but everybody you come across that's good, you should get their information and you should track it so that the next time you need somebody, you can call through a list of 10 or 20 guys that maybe that's a big exaggeration in terms of how many you might have on that list, but you can call through that list and see if there's anybody available that might be interested in work at that moment. So the key here is being creative. The key is go to where they're at and put up advertisements there or talk to people in that area. So for example, in my market, I can think of several apartment complexes where a lot of our maintenance workers, like lawn mowing guys and bush trimmers, tend to live. I can think of convenience stores. I can think of laundromats, all kinds of places. So we go where they are. We don't just run an advertisement somewhere and hope they come to us. We go to them and we ask, hey, you guys know anybody that needs anybody? We put up these advertisements. And then again, once we find a good guy, and probably what you'll find is for every 10 you hire, there'll be 2 guys that just help you find lots more guys and lots of guys like them. And then it keeps going from there. Now, it never really gets a lot easier, but hiring, you should view as the owner of your company, one of your major roles is hiring and attracting people. Or as eventually, if you have somebody kind of helping you run the company, maybe that's their goal. But hiring is not something that you do when you have a need. Hiring is one of your full-time jobs. You're always on the lookout for people. You're always on the lookout for how are you going to find your next person. So I'd start by going where they are and just simply asking, do you know anybody that needs work? Do you know of anybody that's good? You consider offering a hiring bonus. Consider paying a little bit more than other guys pay. Consider, just simply ask people, hey, what would it take to get you to come work with me? And a lot of times a lot of these guys are working for employers that the work isn't always super reliable, or the guy's a jerk that owns the company, or whatever the case may be. So there's always plenty of opportunity to attract a guy to your company by being a better company. So there's that opportunity as well. So you simply have to ask and talk to these guys. So that's the single biggest, easiest, fastest way to get started. And again, easy is the wrong word because it's work, but that's how you do it. That's how you find them. They're definitely not going to come to you. It will get easier later, though. But if you grow fast, then it's really challenging. My point is that never completely goes away. All right, I've got another question about growing the company. So this one is, hey, I'm growing my company, and I'm wondering, what departments do you have in your company? Example, HR, CFO, estimators, salespeople, marketing, field crews. The more info, the better. This would really help me over this hump, which is essential to running a smooth operation. I'm adding words here, and needed. Please. So anyway, so let's talk about this one. Okay, so I'm going to give some examples here, and I'm going to try to lay this out. Also, I'll tell you some of what we have. So I don't give out revenue numbers for our company, but just to give you just a little bit of information, at this moment where we stand, we have about 3,000 full maintenance clients, or full regular clients. And so given that size of a business, which of course is in the millions of dollars, but it's not a big business or anything like that, it's where we stand is we wouldn't need a CFO. I used to be part of a company that was in the 8 figures per year range, and we didn't have a CFO there either. We didn't really have HR either. So let me kind of lay out some examples. So in our company, I believe we have 25 crews at this moment in time. And so the example of how this would play out, kind of what we have at this moment, is we have someone that's full-time in accounting. So they're not a CFO, they're not a controller, which is a controller is somebody, as you get well up into the millions, you might have a controller. That's just somebody, that's an accounting title. And in the company that I was involved with, that we were in the 8-figure per year range. We had 3 people in the accounting department, and there was an accounting department, or 2 or 3 roughly. And then, so in the millions, so I would say up until $1 million, you're not really going to have anybody in your accounting department. It's going to be you. So I'm going to go through some divisions here. So we're talking financial now. It's going to be you. And all of this varies. I mean, here's the dilemma. Like, for example, we're maintenance. So we don't, when you talk about our revenue, we don't sell plant material, we don't sell trees, we don't have outdoor patios and stoves and kitchens and things that we resell. Pretty much all of our revenue comes from literally billing time. So it's different. If you say the landscape company does 5 million versus a landscape maintenance company that does 5 million, that's two totally different businesses, because a good portion of the revenue in a landscape business comes from reselling plant material and stoves and ovens and all those other things that are being resold. It's not all just labor. So generally, to produce 5 million in a landscape business doesn't take as many people as it does to generate 5 million in a maintenance business, for example. So revenue numbers aren't always accurate ways to measure when you're going to need different people or when you're going to need certain types of people, such as accounting or CFOs. And so that's why I gave you an example of about how many accounts we have, just to kind of clarify that we're in the business, in our case, of selling time, because we don't sell plant material. So, and in our this cleaning company that I was talking about, that was in the 8-figure range per year, we were in that business solely selling time as well. And so the way to look at this is, you may not, if I say at $1 million, you might need somebody full-time in accounting. Well, you may for a maintenance business, but you may not for a landscape business, because maybe 300,000 or 400,000 of that revenue is solely just reselling plant material, not generating not having the number of employees it would take to actually produce that many billable hours. So this is going to vary a bit. So some positions that you would have in the $1 million range, you're going to have more than likely, in our case. So I'm just going to use us. We're selling maintenance services. We've got people working the phones. So we've got individuals that answer the phone as soon as the phone rings. We've got people that then quote the work over the phone. They essentially sell over the phone. We've got guys that go out into the field that aren't working in the field at all. What they're doing is they're spot checking work. They're training the crews in the field. They're getting the crews out the door in the morning. They're meeting with clients. They're doing estimates. If there's a client or account problem or an issue, they go out and meet with that client. So that one person right there, they might also be doing hiring. So, for example, if we have a guy that, for example, is over, say, 15 crews, hypothetically, or 10 crews, whatever the number is. That person may be in charge of possibly their scheduling, but there's an argument to be made that somebody at that price point shouldn't be doing the scheduling, or not too much of it. They could have an assistant that is less expensive doing the scheduling. So we definitely think in that mindset of, how much does this person cost the company? How can we have them on the highest level activities possible? So, for example, this is a big position right here, and this is the person that I'm speaking of now that goes out in the field. So they train, they hire, they spot check, they estimate, they deal with account issues. So right there in that example, you've rolled up some HR, some estimating, some sales, some account management, some training, all of that into one person. And so you might have several of those people potentially, depending on how big you are, overseeing the crews. And so they might see, in our case, we would have people over the mowing crews versus guys over, and they might also cover the trimming, versus guys over all the fertilization, weed control, and pest control crews versus guys over the irrigation. So they would probably generally take divisions, pieces of the business that they're over. So that person has lots of hats that they wear, and they do lots of things. So then back inside and they're running around in the field with a laptop down the truck. They're constantly roaming and working from the field, and they can come back to an office environment, but most of the work that they do is outside the office. So that's one of the biggest roles that you'll fill as you get bigger. Now, back to this in the office activities. These are people that aren't leaving the office. You're going to have people answering the phones. Now, in those individuals, when you're small, that one person's going to probably wear a lot more hats and do more things. And as you get bigger, they can be a little bit more specialized. Like, for example, we might have somebody that predominantly answers the phone and handles billing questions and does a little bit of support, but doesn't really necessarily do any sales or estimating, and then transfers the phone over. And that would be the ideal scenario, is you have somebody that stages the call. and gathers some information and hands it off to a salesperson to essentially close the call. And I'm making it sound a little more sophisticated than it really is or needs to be, but that's kind of what happens is really as you get bigger, you can do this. You can really start to think about, okay, I've got this fella or this lady who's really good at this thing. How can we have them spend their most time on that? So if I have somebody that's very good on the phone with clients and can really sell and really sell new work and more work to existing clients, I don't want him answering phones. I don't want him handling billing questions. I don't want him gathering 4 minutes of information from each client, like email addresses and anything that could have been gathered by somebody else that makes $5 an hour less or isn't on commission. So every company's different. So the mindset here is as you're filling your positions and you're growing, how can you have each person on their most valuable task? Now, one thing I'll say about that is a lot of people will put less expensive people on the phones, and I think that's a huge, huge mistake. I don't think that you should cut corners with who's answering your phones. I think you need almost some of your best people working the phones because they're the first impression of the company. They're the ones that make the revenue. They're the ones that close the revenue. They're the customer support. They're how you get the great testimonials and the referrals and the references and all those other things by having their phone people are often the face of your company. And I realize people go out and meet. Your team will go out and meet with clients, but at the same time, that first impression generally starts on the phone. And that's where a lot of closing happens. That's where a lot of selling happens. So don't cut corners on revenue or your expense of hiring or what you pay the people that work the phones. They're extremely important. And so my point is, if your phone people are expensive, think about how can you have somebody answer the phone call, gather some core information, and then maybe send that call on to the right person to essentially make the sale and give them the potential client the detailed information. So that would be an example of how we work. We would have people answering calls and answering billing questions and answering basic questions, helping people with their accounts. But then when it's time to actually make the sell, if it's an existing client and they're just calling up somebody on our team and asking a question because they're already, in a sense, pre-sold, then a lot of people several different people in our company can make that essentially handle booking or scheduling the work. But if they're calling and they're still a little unsure, do I want to use this service? Do I want to use you guys as a company? That's where you transfer them on to maybe you when you're a smaller company, and as you get bigger onto one of your sales team, somebody on your sales team. Now, in our case, we have a sales team in the office, but if we didn't, then we transfer them on to a guy out in the field in his truck with a laptop and a mobile phone to make the sale. So that's another role, is the guys actually closing the business. And then also, so you've got inside the office, you've got people that are closing business. You've got people that are staging the phone calls, handling the phone calls, billing, support, basic scheduling. Then as you get bigger, you might have somebody that's doing all of those things, but tends to have a little bit of a skill around collecting money. And in some companies, they'll do it a little different, where they'll literally have account managers and they divide up all the accounts by account manager. So account manager might have 700 accounts, and a different account manager might have 600. Different one might have 550 or 600. They divide it up, and that person does everything with that account, does all the selling, answering questions, everything. That's another way to do it that some companies will do. So then moving from there into a different department, you might have your accounting. And so a lot of times in a smaller company, accounting is handled by someone like a somewhat office secretary type person that's probably answering questions. They're doing basic bookkeeping in probably QuickBooks or maybe a software package. And then what they do from there is they get the accountant involved for anything higher level. Well, as you start growing into the low millions, depending on how many transactions you have in your business, meaning how many invoices, payments, you might find that it's worth bringing somebody on to be essentially a full-time bookkeeper. And then as you grow into the mid-millions and up to the 10 million range, again, it varies by business, but this is when you'd really start probably thinking about a controller, somebody with higher level financial information. In that range, you might also start thinking about a part-time CFO. So there are guys out there that used to be full-time CFOs or have a tremendous amount of CFO experience that will share that will basically work between 5 or 10 or 15 different companies as a part-time CFO. So they work with companies that are not in need of a full-time CFO, and so they're not necessarily inexpensive, but they're far cheaper than hiring a $90, $100, $110,000 a year CFO or whatever the cost is. So in my case, we don't use a CFO. We don't even use a part-time CFO, but it would be something I would consider. But we haven't needed that between our experience with dealing with finances for bigger companies and having a good accountant or good accountant team. We've never done that. But in the other company I was involved with that was in the low 8 figures per year in revenue, we did have a controller there and then the equivalent of a bookkeeper or two to handle all the transactions. So that would be another part of the department, another role that you'd be looking at. I think it would be quite some time before you would have a true what's called an HR department. I think a lot of your operations manager, the company president or owner, or maybe your managers that run divisions would essentially be in many ways your HR department. You can also outsource a lot of your admin stuff to companies like Administaff, and you just have to look around. I don't use Administaff, but a lot of companies do. But there's companies that do what they do, and they are essentially your outside HR staff. Sometimes bookkeepers or a better set accountants and CPAs can help you with some of the basic HR stuff just to make sure you're covered when you're smaller. But generally, up into the millions, the HR role is not headed up by a full-time HR person. That task is handled by different people that are over different parts of the business. All right, so I'm going to just run through a list of the kind of people that we have just to give you some ideas. Okay, so at our company, we are going to have individuals that answer the phone, can answer billing questions, do some light scheduling, help the client, very, very customer support oriented. They'll transfer the calls over for the selling. So we have our salespeople. We have bookkeeper, accounting, full-time. We would then have someone that runs the whole company. I call them the operations manager. This is the individual that runs the whole company. And then then there's individuals that report to this person that runs the company. So we'd have guys that report to him that run their different parts of the business. So for example, in our company, we have a couple guys that run all the mowing, trimming, bed maintenance type crews. And then we have guys that run, or a guy that runs all of the pest control and fertilization side of the business. And then we've got someone that handles all the irrigation side of the business. And so there's some other things that get lumped in there under these different, but essentially those are kind of the division heads in a sense that then report to the guy that runs the whole company. And then we're bringing on a full-time marketing person. This person's sole responsibility is to make sure the marketing gets out the door. That role sort of used to be me, but since Service Autopilot, I have completely dropped the ball on that role. So I never actually stuffed the envelopes, but I managed it, managed the marketing calendar, made sure everything happened. And now, because I spend almost all my time working on Service Autopilot, that I spend very little time on a lot less time than I wish I could on this business. And so I have sort of not done what I need to do there. So I should have a year ago brought somebody in to basically make sure the marketing happens. It's still been happening, but it could have happened at a higher level. So in the millions, once you cross into the couple million plus business, you might think about bringing somebody in. They don't have to be a very expensive person that basically follows your marketing calendar, makes sure things get done and get out the door, and then and so I'm the marketing person in the company. I still am. And so that would be another role. Me as the owner, I see my most important duties are to figure out where the company's going from a strategy standpoint. Doesn't mean I figure it all out by myself. We have a team. We talk about it. We figure it out. But that, at the end of the day, my job is hiring the next major leaders of the company. And the guy that's running the company is so good at it, I haven't even had to worry about that. But that would be one of my roles as an owner, is to make sure that I'm hiring the right high-level people, that I am setting the strategy and course for the company, and that I am handling the marketing growth of the company. And there's other things that go into that, but those would be in the finance. Those would be the four main things that I, as the owner, would feel are my highest priorities. And then from there, everything gets delegated down. So I don't necessarily handle all those activities. I might have people to handle them. So, for example, I'll set the marketing agenda. I'll write the marketing copy. I might produce most of the marketing, but then somebody else makes sure it gets done, gets out the door. And then somebody else makes sure that everything's managed and scheduled. But I might set the direction or say, hey, this is where I think the company needs to go. Next year, we need to add these services in, things like that. That's what the owner's role is, to set that direction. And so additional areas within the companies are those managers I talked about that are over parts of the business, that do everything from estimating to hiring to spot checking to training, all of that, meeting with clients. Then in addition to that, you're going to have, as you get bigger, you're going to have maintenance guys. So we have full-time guys that I guess you'd call them full-time guys that come in to do maintenance, small engine repair, blade sharpening, oil changing, brakes on the trucks, the ball joints, all kinds of things. They come in and that's their job. They come in and they prep all the equipment. They do all the maintenance. We've taken all of that out of the crew's hands. All the crews do is put their blades on, but everything else is sharpened and done for them, down to even filling up some of the gas cans. And so, we've got that role in the company. And that's for the most part, as far as I can think, those are all our major roles. Now, somebody's going to be over purchasing, but I think that's the person running the company. At least in the under $10 million range. This starts to change as you get into above 10 million. And again, I'm kind of making up a number. I don't know what the exact number looks like in the lawn care industry, maintenance versus landscape, but there's some number that you start to exceed where, yes, you really do have an HR department, you really do have a CFO, and you really do have a purchasing manager. But for the vast majority of lawn cares, it's going to be like 0.0025% of lawn care companies that will ever get to that level. I mean, you can run a $7, $8, $9 million a year lawn care company and make a lot of money and never really have to have some of these official CFO, HR person roles. You'll have those roles encompassed by other people, like the president of the company kind of wears the hat for high-level hiring and wears the hat for approving large purchase orders and buying equipment in bulk and things like that. So you don't have a specific purchasing manager type person. So those are some examples of what we're doing. Hopefully that helps. If you want more, if that makes you think of other questions, just email me back and I'll give you more detail. All right, let's work on some additional questions here. So I'm going to jump around here. Let's take this one right here. This one right here. I also have some questions about the growth of social media and Facebook. Should I be working on a Facebook account, and how is the best way to handle that? I don't use Facebook personally. So I would not claim to have all the answers on this subject. I've kind of been slow to adopt social media. For the most part, I tend to think that it's somewhat of a waste of time, at least personally, to spend a bunch of time on Facebook and all these other sites. So I tend to stay away from that stuff and not spend too much personal time on it. And I was sort of skeptical about it. And I'm still a little bit skeptical about social media in general. Not that I think it's going away, because there's no question that it's not going away. It's definitely the future. But I'm skeptical about the return on investment versus sticking with some of the tried and true things that work, like Google AdWords works, SEO works, postcards work, door hangers work, all these other things that work. Email blast to clients work. All this stuff works. It's known to work. So sometimes getting distracted and working on other things because they're the new thing and the new popular thing that everybody's talking about is sometimes a bad idea, because it takes away from the time you could spend on all the things that are already proven that even though they're not popular, they're not the latest thing, they still work really well. So that's why I've been slow to jump on the social media bandwagon, but I believe in it. And so that's where I say the return on investment on it, though, I think is lower. But that could also be because I haven't figured out how to do it right. So I'm in no way an expert on this. I'll just tell you what my thoughts are on it and what I think is important at the moment. There's no doubt that social media is something you do need to spend some portion of time on, because it's absolutely the future. Facebook
received huge investment money way back when from Microsoft, who bought a small, like I think 2.5% or 4%, I don't know the number, ownership in Facebook for just a ridiculous amount of money, which back then I think is what kind of helped set their value as about 15 billion back then. The point is, Microsoft took a position in Facebook, and they did it for several reasons. One, so that Google probably couldn't buy them, and two, they understood the importance of social media and how it's going to affect search engines and such. And there's a lot more to it, but that's one of the things you want to think about is now with the Microsoft and Facebook partnership, your search results are affected by your Facebook account because of that partnership if you're logged in. Just like if you log into your Gmail account, your Google search results are affected. They change depending on if you're logged into your Gmail or your Google account. Versus if you're not logged in, when you do a search, you'll notice your results are different. So the search engines are starting to use social media in their filtering and search results. So that's what makes this really important. So from a Facebook standpoint, there's that, which because it's the future, is something you want to think about. Something else that's just minor that I do like about Facebook by setting it up. So for example, if you look at, if I go to a login screen here, for Service Autopilot. So something we haven't really promoted, but we have a link in. We have a Service Autopilot page with with Facebook, but we haven't put a lot of effort into it or anything like that. But one thing that I do think happens here is when our clients click like, and by including our Facebook account, linking it into our website, it gives it a face. It gives our customers a face, or gives our company a face. Just like I think your About page is one of your most important pages on your website, because it lets people meet you, connect with you, gives your company a personality. Well, in a sense, linking in the Facebook applet or whatever they call this, where you can see pictures of all the different users of your company, it's sort of like testimonials. It gives your company a face and a realness. So I like that. That's just a little bitty feature of social media, but it's one of the things that I like about it. So there's some value, I think, in collecting that, because like I said, it shows that you're a real company, and other people like your prospective clients. They see other people that are kind of like them, and they're like, it just makes it believable that they see that other people like you. It's social proof that you're a good company and other people are using you and like you. So I like that. And then over here in Facebook, so I'm going to log into an account. So I'm not really a good Facebook user. I don't really use it much, and so I do have an account, but I don't really get on here and read it, and I don't really know all the things I can do with it. But what I do know, and of the guys I know that are successful with Facebook, is they're running the ads over here on the right side. So just like you can run Google ads, so I'm in Facebook now, but if you notice, I've got ads over here. And these ads are customized to me. So for example, I don't really see. So I changed pages here. Here's a better. So I went to my front page of my site. Okay, so if you look here on the right side of this, you have these sponsored ads right here. And if you kind of look at what these ads are, they're customized to me. So for example, and I've never really, the point here is that this is the part of Facebook that I think is the most, and the part of social media that I personally think is the part that might work the best right now. So one of the cool things about FreshBooks, and one of the things that, I keep saying FreshBooks, I mean Facebook, one of the things about these guys that is unique over everyone else is that they know incredible amounts of information about their clients. So when you go to buy ads on Facebook, you can say, I want to buy ads for people that live in Dallas, females over 35, between 35 and 60, and you can even do things like, and I want to buy ads with people that are interested in whatever it might be, a certain thing. And you can really tailor those ads, just like these ads are tailored to me. So for example, I'm into business and marketing stuff. So here's a kind of a business finance. Here's a business marketing. ad. I have no idea why the cell phone ad. They may not have a lot of restrictions on they might be just buying ads that get out to everybody. But these guys here, the rich dad, might be buying financial or business or marketing our ads with people that are interested in that stuff. I'm interested in see here if we scroll down. I'm interested in cars, so I have some stuff. I'm interested in auto racing and kart racing and such. So they've probably picked that up from my account. That's why we have a car and driver advertisement here for the Lamborghini. So my point is that they are reading my account and figuring out what makes me unique, and then individuals are buying ads targeted to me. And that's my favorite thing about social media. That's where I think one of the big powers is. So it's not as much about having the Facebook account, which I'm not discounting and saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying that from everybody I know and I talk to, this is where they get the most success. They go buy ads inside Facebook marketing directly to the people they want to go after, just like you'd buy Google AdWords ads on Google. Same concept, except it's in Facebook. So that's one thing I'm big on. And the other thing I've heard some guys that I agree with say is, you've got so many different things you can do. You got Twitter, and you got Facebook, and you've got blogging, and you've got YouTube videos, and you've got so many different things that you could potentially do from a marketing standpoint, getting your name out there. If you try to do them all, it's too much. You're only going to maybe spend an hour a week on each of these different things, and you can never go very deep with it. So I tend to think it's better, and this is what I've heard other guys say, and I agree, you're better off picking one or two things and really spending your effort on that. So that's kind of what I've done with Lawn Care Millionaire, for example. Lawn Care Millionaire, I've just decided I'm going to focus on the part of supposed social media, which would be the blogging and the videos, and I have YouTube host that, and I have a website here, but that's the part of social media that I've embraced. Now, I do have a Facebook account. I paid somebody to set up my Facebook account, and I paid them to set up a Twitter account. This is pretty recent stuff here, so that I can also, when I post a video, it'll post it to Facebook, and then it will tweet it out and notify whoever's following me on Twitter. So this is all stuff that I've had somebody set up for me, but I haven't really spent any time on it. I'm not really spending any time to go deep with it and really, I try to interact with everybody on Facebook. And the only reason, not that I don't believe Facebook works, is I just can only do so much. So I've chosen to focus on just doing my Lawn Care Millionaire site and doing and posting the videos on YouTube, and kind of ignoring everything else just so I can do one thing halfway decent. So I think that from a social media standpoint, I think you should be involved in it, and I think it's important. But at the same time, I think you should pick one or two things and really work on those. And now maybe in 6 months you work on something else. But to try to do Twitter, Facebook, and everything else, it's just too much. Something else that I think is really important. So we have Siri now on the iPhone, so you've got voice search, and it's coming to the Xbox and through the Kinect and other things. So this is the future, without question. You're going to talk to your devices. It's going to be a while, but now Apple has signed a deal with Yelp. So we've told our Service Autopilot clients about a concept, and we've been giving out some free information, but I'm not too sure that everybody's really taken it that seriously or grabbed hold of the concept, but I'm positive it's the future. And that is that, by the way, you can download what we gave our Service Autopilot clients for free. We put something together for them kind of as a thank you. We've actually now put it up here on Lawn Care Millionaire. You can download it right here, and it's about getting reviews and testimonials. I don't think most people have taken it seriously, but it's a huge deal. And with my business now, I'm starting to spend money on this, and it's an area that we've always needed to do for Service Autopilot. We've neglected it, and now we're starting to put the resources towards it, just because we're at that point in the business now where we can. But this concept is that you really need to be getting reviews and testimonials from your clients. And one of the single biggest reasons is because the future of search, and in my lawn care business, I work really hard to dominate my market for search, and I've even increased my budgets even more for 2012 to even further dominate that market. But my point is, that will only last for so long. There's a change coming where a lot of your search results are going to be voice. Somebody's going to say to their iPhone, I need a lawn care company in Atlanta, and the phone's going to come back and give them the results. They're not going to be typing into Google. Well, these search engines, or the future of whatever this is going to look like, is going to interact with sites like Yelp and testimonials and review sites. So if you aren't dominating reviews and testimonials, you're eventually going to lose that battle too, just like most guys have already lost the SEO battle, and they won't commit the thousands of dollars a month it takes to really dominate SEO. Well, if you ignore testimonials and reviews, which are all social media, then a couple years from now, I don't know if it's 2 or 4 or 5, you're going to lose that game as well, because things are shifting towards that. The guys with the most testimonials and the likes and the reviews and the most people talking about them on Yelp and Facebook and Google Places, they're going to be the next group of companies that get recommended above everybody else. So this is why I do take social media seriously, and I think you need to kind of dip your toe in the water and work on it and focus on a couple things within it, and reviews and testimonials are one of those big things. But you can't spend all your budget on it. You can't divert your money away from the things that are working right now just to work on this stuff. So my personal opinion is that I would spend probably a good bit of my effort on Facebook if I was going to pick just one thing. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm not a real expert on this topic, but if I had to pick where I was going to invest my time social media wise, it would be Facebook, and it would be buying ads. It would be getting people to like me. I would link Facebook into my site. And then the other thing that I would invest in is I would work on linking in my Google Places site. I would work on Yelp. I would work on Insider Pages. I would work on these different review sites, and I would start getting reviews from my clients and testimonials. Those are the 2 biggest things I would be working on. Local search, local rankings, which is sort of feeds into social in my mind, because you get your reviews and testimonials, and then of course in Facebook. Now, I'm not saying that putting up videos on YouTube is a bad idea, because I would do that as well. I would put some YouTube videos up, and then I would link those videos into my site, into my website, so that your potential buyer, your prospect, can see you, connect with you, see you're a real person. You can educate them, and there's a connection that can be seen when the person can see you and kind of feels like you're talking to them, that you can't have necessarily just reading an about page with just text. And so that's sort of considered, video is sort of considered social media to some people, so I would do that. But those are the big areas that I would focus on. So the next question here was, we want to dominate and do more on the internet. We don't do video now or anything like it. What are your thoughts on a YouTube channel? Maybe in the future we can do some affiliate marketing with you and try to generate more business for Service Autopilot. Maybe help my business grow as well. Thoughts? Okay, so just focusing on this first part here about video. Obviously, I like video. I mean, I have 230 some odd videos just on Lawn Care Millionaire, not counting the 250 videos I've recorded for Service Autopilot. So here I've got nearly 500 videos. We just moved into new offices, and I set a whole video room up. So one of the offices is dedicated to the backdrop and screens and lights. So clearly I like video. I think it's a big deal, and it's not the fad anymore. It's not the big thing. People have moved on to other stuff, but I still like video. And so I totally believe in video, but I think you can step into this kind of like I was saying a second ago. So for your company, what I would do, and this is something I'm working on for our company, Lawn Care Company as well, is recording a lot of video that talks about why you're different, why you're better, talks about who your company is, talks about each of the services you offer, and kind of teaches your clients what to look for, what they should care about, what they should consider when making a buying decision. And I wouldn't make them a big sales pitch, although some of them should be a big sales pitch. I mean, some of them should be a glorified sales presentation in video. And so instead of your sales presentation being given verbally over and over, one-on-one, you can sort of package that up and make a video sales presentation that goes on the front page of your website. But a lot of your videos should be more educational, and it should be relaxed. It doesn't have to be overly professional. And people want to connect with people. They want to do business with people they like. So if you're a likable person, then you should be on video so they can connect with you. If you're not a likable person, then find somebody in your company that people like and put them on video. But it gives your company a face and a personality. So I'm a big believer in it. But I think you can keep it simple. You can simply record some video on a $100 flip camera or on the new iPhone 4S. The video on those things was great. Record the video there, upload it to YouTube, click on the embed link. So for example, if you go out to YouTube Let me see if I can do this real fast. All right, I can't do that as fast as I thought. So let me show you, because this is worth seeing. You might already know. Wrong place. YouTube. Going to YouTube here. Okay, so I have no idea what this stuff is. Nothing of this junk is related to me. But if you go down here, so I'm on somebody's site. If I go into this video, see right here where it says share. Stop that. Okay, so here where it says share, if you click that, you can do this on your own site, and then you click embed. So I clicked embed. So this would be on your own YouTube account with your own video. You can go down here and you pick your size, and then I would turn off the show suggested videos when it finishes. I turn that off. Just click in here, right click on it, copy it, go and paste this into your HTML page on your website, and it will embed this video in there. That's all I do for my Lawn Care Millionaire site. I have simply edited these web pages, and I just embedded these videos in there. That's all I did. So they're really on YouTube. So when somebody watches a video on Lawn Care Millionaire, it counts as a view over on the YouTube channel. And the more views you get, the more popular your videos are, the more likely they are to get found. So from a video standpoint on your website, there may be a little bit of a bump from an SEO standpoint. There's actually value in putting video on your site. The other thing about from an SEO standpoint is video helps keep a user on your site while they watch it. The longer people stay on your site, that helps your SEO ranking. So there's a lot of little side ancillary benefits to video, but my single biggest reason that I like video is it's an easier way to connect with the person. If you're just reading something I wrote, like on Lawn Care Millionaire here, I've got quite a few things. If you kind of scroll down here on this front page, I've got quite a bit of text, if you can see. Well, I don't think you can connect with me quite the same way you can as when I record a video. Or at least, so I think the hierarchy is kind of print, and then especially, really great writers, that's different. But for someone like me, where I'm not a great writer, the lowest level of connecting with my potential audience is writing, and then after that it's audio, and then after that I think it's video, because then you can see me and you sort of make eye contact type of concept. So I think you would apply those same types of concepts to your business. If they can see you, see your company, see what you're about, I think there's value there in video. So I do recommend it, but I don't think you have to put just a ridiculous amount of time and effort into it. It's just one of the things that you do. I've been thinking about opening a second or possibly a third business strictly for marketing purposes only. It would be called whatever, property management or maintenance. Maybe that trigger word would generate more internet commercial leads. Thoughts? We have set up some squeeze pages in the area we service that work really well. Okay, so a couple things here. Generally, I find that websites and web marketing, they can work for the commercial market, but they don't work nearly as well as residential. So I would spend a lot more money on web marketing, SEO, those types of activities if I was a residential company. I would spend significant amounts of money, and I do, but I'm saying if I would spend significant amounts of money if I'm residential oriented. If I'm predominantly commercial oriented, I would have a web presence, but I would spend it would be a much, much smaller portion of my budget. And I could be wrong on this, but from personal experience, and we've sold commercial accounts over the web without question. I can think of one that we have now that I believe pays us around $40,000 a year that we got years ago that came through the web. And we've had plenty of others, but I can think of one because I was personally involved in that one. And it came as a web lead, and that account, I don't know, probably been worth $160,000 to us. And that was just one lead off of the web. And so clearly, at $160,000 off just one account, I could afford to spend some money on commercial online marketing to commercial clients. But my point is, in terms of the number that you'll sell, it'll be far, far fewer over versus residential. Now, the important concept here is who cares about the volume you sell? What matters is the dollar value, the dollar volume of what you sell. So I'd be perfectly content selling one $300,000 account every year over the web.
just as I would, 300,000 worth of residential. So it doesn't matter the number you sell. It matters the amount of revenue you can sell, given the amount of investment and time you make into building out your online marketing strategy. I personally find that we sell like 20 to 1 residential over commercial. Now, we don't focus too hard on trying to sell commercial, but I just don't think the web is as valuable there as it is getting out, knocking on doors, getting out, talking to people, getting in with the property management companies, uh, putting yourself in situations to socialize and meet with people that are making the deals. So, for example, I've referenced before this other company that I was a partner in for quite many years, and in that company we did a lot of revenue, and it was 100% commercial in a specific niched market, serving only a certain type of client. And to this day, that company still has a one-page website, and that one-page website is pretty much nothing but a logo and a phone number for existing clients to go find the number. And that website's never been needed. In fact, the website would probably barely even help that company, because even if we did attract some of the smaller clients in that marketplace, we never even wanted them. We knew exactly who we wanted as clients, and they weren't going to be searching for us on the internet. We had to go get them. And that entire company that was, it's 8 figures a year in revenue, was built off, instead of having a big marketing strategy, it was a sales. The money was essentially allocated towards sales. That meant going out, flying to see them, working with other clients to introduce us to other clients like themselves that we wanted, sponsoring our clients' kids' baseball teams, taking our clients to sporting events. We had tons of tickets. We had tickets to sporting teams in different states. We'd take clients there. We'd take clients on dinners. We would pay for clients to go out to trade shows with us. We would, at trade shows, take lots of people out to dinner and spend a whole bunch of money on them. There's just, you can come up with example after example of what the marketing budget was to grow that company. It was basically a sales budget, meaning you were spending money on salespeople, and you were spending money on people traveling and entertaining and making personal connections and relationships. I tend to think that's the best, fastest way to grow commercial, is to really get in there, find the people that are making the decisions, find the people that are controlling the properties, become their friends, become their trusted source. Think about all the things that a property manager would like to eliminate. So, for example, most property managers are under tremendous pressure to come in with the best prices, best possible pricing for whatever property they're managing, for each of the services that they're contracting out at that property. But at the same time, they're human beings, and they're busy, and they've got families and kids, and they don't want to go with the lowest price provider. And they often go with the lowest price provider if they can, but it's based on the provider that's not going to screw them over. Meaning that just because you're the lowest price provider, you may not win the bid if they perceive that they're going to have to deal with complaints from the tenants, they're going to have to deal with problems, you're not going to show up, and it's going to make their life busy and hectic. They've already got enough going on in their life. So there's the balance that they have of the best price and making their life as painless as possible. And somewhere in the middle between those two things, they're going to pick who they perceive to be the best price provider that's going to take care of whatever it is they're contracting out with the least amount of their effort and time required. And the easiest way to become that company is to build a personal relationship. Let them know you over the other 8 people that are bidding the job, and so that you can if they trust you over the other 8, there's a higher probability you're going to get it. Now, your price has to be in line, but there's been several times that I found that we had properties that had to go back out to bid, because that's the way it worked. They have to go back out to bid. But at the end of the day, the property manager had zero intention of ever switching vendors. But they had to go back out to bid just for their due diligence to be able to say they went back out to bid and they tested the marketplace. We had times where the clients would go back out to bid, and we would be a higher priced provider, and they'd come back and they'd say, hey, here's the bids. You guys got to work with me on this. What can we do to cut costs here? Because from a due diligence standpoint, I can't go back to my client and continue to keep you guys when you guys are higher than 5 other companies that bid on this project that are also good companies. Can you guys work with me on price? How can we get creative? So by building these relationships, you, in some level, can protect your business. Not always, but at times you can protect the business. So the fastest, easiest, safest way to grow the business is through a sales strategy. I'm speaking to commercial here, where you go out and you build relationships. And a lot of properties controlled by property management companies now. So if you can go out and build a relationship with one property management company that controls a lot of properties, it can open up a door to bidding on a lot of properties very, very quickly. Not to mention, property managers move around. They go from company to company. So you could start out with them at one property management company, they go work for another, and you end up moving over there with them as well, and eventually getting business there. So it's very much an investment up front in time and labor and expense to build these relationships, but that's how it happens. That's one of the best ways to do it. And I'm speaking from experience. So from a web leads and marketing standpoint, I'm not as gung-ho on it. I'm not saying don't spend any money on it, but I would spend a considerably less amount of money on my online marketing strategy for a commercial business than I would for a residential business. There was also something mentioned here in this about the fact that there's several squeeze pages, and basically their squeeze pages would be, for those that don't know, like mini websites that are 1 or 2 pages. Squeeze site's generally 1 page that captures a username or captures an email address and a client name, so you can keep marketing to them, and probably gives them something, some piece of information, some ebook, some white paper, something. So squeeze pages are a good strategy. Now, one thing to be careful of, squeeze pages don't generally rank very well at all in search engines. In fact, Google doesn't like squeeze pages. So sometimes you can't get good rankings with the squeeze page. The only way you can get good ranking, you just can't get good rankings there. So what you've got to do in those cases is pretty much use those for your Google AdWords campaigns. However, one thing that I saw somewhere in here, it said something about duplicate content. And I don't know where I read that, but I could sworn that I read something about, oh, here we go. We use the exact same content on all of them that we need to tweak a bit to help list them higher on Google. That's exactly right. So this is a really important concept. So you've probably heard me mention before that in my lawn care business, we have a lot of selling websites. We have a lot of websites. We've got some core websites, and then we also have a bunch of sites dedicated to a certain topic, like a certain service or a certain city. And it's just it's a marketing strategy. Well, one thing you can't do is when you set up all these different websites, they all have to be under different domains. They can have a similar design, but they have to have different content. Now, you can generally, in some cases, get away with duplicating the content for some period of time, but generally it's going to affect your ratings, and sometimes it's going to mean that if somebody types in, like, let's use Dallas Lawn Care, and if you've got 2 websites that could potentially appear for Dallas Lawn Care because they're under different domain names, but they have the same or similar content, only one will appear. And in some cases, one of those sites will be completely delisted in the search engine, meaning that you'll never find them. So years ago, for our CityTurf website, I learned this lesson. I don't know how many years ago it was now, but I had duplicated the CityTurf website with another domain, and Yahoo completely banned cityturf.com from the search engines. And so that was my first, and this may have been 4 years ago, but that was my first realization of what happened. And then as I researched, I figured out why. I had duplicated the content, and Yahoo was smart enough to figure that out. So duplicating content is an absolute no-no, I guess you would say, in web marketing. You do not want to do it. Rule of thumb that I've heard is you could duplicate up to about 25% of the content of the site, but the other 75% needs to vary. I don't know if that's completely accurate, but these search engines are smart and getting smarter, and duplicating content is generally not a strategy that's going to work for you. You could duplicate content for 2 sites in completely different topics, and sometimes that'll work. But if you're trying to get both sites found under the same topic, such as Lawn Care Atlanta or in lawn care in general, when somebody in Atlanta is searching, you're probably not going to get results from both sites, almost never. So that's not something you'd want to do. All right, I'm going to answer 2 more questions. This last one, or the second to last one here, is how can I profit? So I'm right here. How can I profit from the green industry, and what is the potential you see for the future? This is a tough one because every market's a little bit different and every business is a bit different. But my general take on the lawn care industry is that it's a good one to be in. So I think there's definitely concerns, though. And so I'll give you a few of my concerns, but I think there's also plenty of opportunity. It's one of the bigger service industries that you could be in. So, for example, you might think of plumbing or HVAC, something like that. Well, those are big service industries, but at the same time, they're not as big. There's a lot more transactions in lawn care than there is in, say, plumbing. Now, granted, your per visit ticket or the per visit, the size of the work order might be bigger in plumbing, maybe, depending on what service you're offering, but you sort of got the equivalent of plumbing and irrigation. So lawn care is a neat industry in that there's so many different aspects to it. So I've been in cleaning, I've been in lawn care, I've done some stuff in carpet cleaning. I've done some different things, mainly oriented towards cleaning and lawn care. And my take is, but through Service Autopilot, we get to talk to a lot of companies, and I've thought about a lot about other industries that someday we may expand Service Autopilot to. And I've researched them at some level, and I keep coming back to the fact that I tend to like lawn care the best. Now, there's a bunch of guys that say, well, there's not as much money in lawn care, or it's hard, or there's all these different problems, but every single industry that I know of has problems. Of all the things I've done thus far, it feels like, I haven't yet found that thing that's magical, that's easy and more lucrative than another. Now, there are things that are more lucrative than another, but my point is that there is no thing that's just super easy. So, like, if I'm into technology, obviously, so in technology a few years back, everybody wanted to make all their money selling ebooks online. And so there used to be guys in the late 90s and early 2000s that could go write an ebook on a topic, and they could sell it, and they could make six figures a year doing hardly anything. Well, that whole business is essentially dead. It's not. There are still guys making money, but not like they used to. Things have changed, and that the whole technology market tends to be that way. Things that work now won't work in a couple of years. Things that make a lot of money now, they'll be dead in a couple of years. It's constantly changing. So a lot of times you'll hear about other businesses or industries where some guy is making a crazy amount of money and he's doing incredible and he works 4 hours a week. However, that usually comes to an end and he's got to start all over. So yeah, he made $100,000 a year for a couple of years, and then for the next 3 years he made $25,000 a year. And so when you average it all out, yeah, he kind of got to go on vacation for a year or two, but then he's right back at work, rebuilding and everything later. So that's my general take on most of the things out there that are considered to be the next big thing that's going to make life easy and simple. They only generally last for a period of time. So I only care about things that are long-term sustainable. And I think about that kind of stuff a lot. And when you're talking about service industries, then so if you're picking the ideal business to be in the service industry, dispatching a truck out to somebody's home or their business to take care of them, I tend to keep coming back to lawn care. Now, I like plumbing. There's some things to think about, in a service like that. You have a higher ticket. So you mean when you go out and render service, you typically make more money. But that's not always true. A lot of plumbers do an $80 service call, just like in irrigation. But there's some interesting things about, say, plumbing or HVAC. But they're also different in that, at least in lawn care, you can make a sell once and keep servicing over and over and over again. And also in lawn care, it's easier to find your client sometimes. In lawn care, it's easier to know the time of year that they might need different services. Whereas in, say, plumbing, you never know when their pipes are going to break. You never know when the faucet's going to clog up. So how do you market to be in front of them at just the right moment? Now, I would say the web, that's one of the ways, but you can only grow your company so fast if you only use the web and the internet. If you want to grow really fast, you've got to get involved in print marketing and some other strategies in addition to the web. So it's easier to go find your clients in lawn care than it is sometimes in, say, plumbing or HVAC or some of these other services, because you don't know when your client's going to have a need. So my take on the industry in the future is that I still think it's one of the best industries to be in. There's a billion examples of guys that don't make any money in the business, but that's just because they don't make money. That doesn't mean other guys don't make money. In every industry, there's guys not making any money. So my belief is that the biggest challenges that I'm seeing right now, the things that are on the horizon that would concern me, is payroll, hiring legal workers. That I just perceive this legal versus illegal labor problem to be the problem that's just going to be with us for decades to come. It's going to be the big debate in all of the presidential elections and all of the intermediate elections every couple years. It's going to be the big topic about how they're going to solve the problem, but they're not really going to solve the problem. It's going to be like the new Medicare, Social Security. Every 4 years we talk about doing something, but we don't. So I perceive that we're going to bounce around back and forth between presidents and Congress and Senates that are hard on immigration and those that aren't. And I'm not going to go into it, but I am not one that is. I am not saying that we don't have a problem. We have a serious problem that needs to be solved. So I'm not coming down on the side of saying that we should just ignore the problem. I'm just saying that from a business owner standpoint, protecting what you're building here, you never really know what you're dealing with. You can invest tremendous amounts of money, like I have, to be in the H-2B visa program, only to have the government essentially try to destroy it. Then you can invest to really a lot of money to make sure you have a 100% legal workforce, like I have done, and only to find out that it barely even matters if you have a legal workforce. However, in a couple more years, it might matter greatly. So when President Bush was president and I was in the cleaning industry, there were guys that were company sizes like ours in the 8 figures that were getting busted for using illegal labor, and it was a big deal. And then when President Obama got elected, and from my perspective, and I may be wrong on this, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal anymore. That topic's kind of blown over completely. So I perceive that in another year or so, it could change again, and maybe it's a big deal. So I think we're going to battle that for some time to come. If you look at what's going on in California and New Jersey and other states regarding chemicals, I think that's a concern for the industry. Again, I'm not coming down on the side that we don't have a problem with how companies spray chemicals and overuse of chemicals and all that. But I am saying that there's tremendous regulations coming out of those states that are going to eventually feed into the other states, and compliance is going to get harder and regulations are going to get harder. So that's a new business expense. So that's another concern. So labor, chemicals, big concerns. I used to dislike licensing and permits, but now as I get bigger, I like them. Not that I would vote for them because I think they're sometimes prohibitive to the economy of the U.S., but I like them as I get bigger because it locks out my competitors from competing against me, because it puts up additional barriers and hoops they have to jump through to do business, which keeps less low ballers and competitors out of the market, which is great. But I think you should expect more government regulations and such. But again, depending on how you view that, as you get bigger, that's not so much a negative anymore. If you've got the staff to handle the red tape, then it greatly shrinks the market of players or guys that are competing for business. So that's a potential problem, and at the same time a potential benefit. Other potential problems are fuel. I have no idea what's going to happen with fuel. The world's a mess, and who knows? There's no way to know. And again, I guess with my pessimistic attitude here on anything government related, I tend to figure there's no solutions coming. The only saving thing on fuel is I think that it's such a small percentage. I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, but it's such a small percentage of your overall cost within the business. And not that it's small, but relative to labor, it's one of those expenses that you can adjust your pricing. Minimal adjustments to pricing can cover the inflation in fuel or the run up in pricing in fuel. So if we have a 50% run up in labor cost, that's a lot more difficult to sustain and handle and price than it is to have a 50% run up in fuel. So fuel's of concern, but not nearly the magnitude of labor. Healthcare, serious concern, depending on what happens with the healthcare laws. So this is something that I think is going to be it's going to be a national conversation, just as it has been, but it's going to be one now for a long time to come. And if some of the laws that have been voted in are not repealed, then I think it's a serious concern. But again, you're not able to go into too many other industries and not have that same problem. So there's concerns there. So these are all areas that are of concern, but some of these affect other industries. Labor doesn't necessarily affect plumbing. Not that I'm saying it's easy to always go find a plumber, but it doesn't affect labor doesn't affect plumbing probably quite the same way it does finding guys to mow lawns and trim bushes. Whereas it's finding, the problem with finding irrigators, labor there, it's a different problem than finding lawnmower guys. So those are concerns. Now, I was kind of negative here. I just gave you my list of big concerns, and there's others. But again, we could go into cleaning, has a lot of the same problems. And we could go into pest control. We could go into any number of different industries, and you're going to have a lot of different problems. And so there is no one perfect industry, and if it's perfect now, in 3 years it won't be. So in terms of the overall potential and the vastness of the industry, I like lawn care. Not to mention, think about something else. If you think about down economies and changing markets and how cyclical the economy is, and as things change, lawn care has held up fairly well. Now, I know a lot of guys have got killed, especially on the design build side, and some guys have got hurt in commercial. But when the economy shrank in a lot of markets in the U.S., everybody didn't run out and fire their lawn care company. Commercial businesses or businesses still needed lawn care companies. They might have cut back, but they needed them. Residential homeowners didn't all go fire all their lawn care companies and buy lawnmowers and suddenly decide they were willing to mow the lawn for 4 hours each week. They didn't do it. They might have cut back. It may have hurt our businesses at some level. May have cut back on revenue. There may have been, some more competition, but businesses potentially could survive down economies. That's a good sign. And some businesses, some service industries are truly still luxury items that the potential homeowner or business could cut back on or completely eliminate. There's lots of examples of that. Lawn care is not necessarily that example. So that's another reason why I think highly of the industry. So I haven't really given you a lot of reasons why, specific examples of what to like about the industry, but that's my general opinion. It's a good one. But let me give you one idea here, and that is that what I think you want to look for in your business is you want to look for the parts of the industry where there's less competition, where there's not commodity pricing. Like, for example, in mowing, a lot of times for residential, it's generally the homeowner generally has some kind of an idea of what the lawn might cost to mow, but they have no idea what it would cost necessarily to fix a zone that went out on their irrigation system, or they don't know what it would cost to dig up a dead 20-foot tree or take it down and put in a new one. They just can't easily go shop that pricing. So I think the strategy in the industry is to look for those segments of the industry with less competition, where the consumer's a bit less price conscious, where the consumer can't easily price shop you and will buy more on value than on price. And I actually believe that even in the mowing business, and I believe we've proven this, they will buy on value over price anyhow. But my point is that I think that the key to the business is not the mow, blow, and go concept where you just go in and you're the mass, you mow in mass, which I find to be personally highly profitable. But in addition to that, to then zero in and find the great opportunities in a marketplace, and they might shift over time. So are they pest control? Are they irrigation? Might you someday be in plumbing? It's a step away from lawn care, but it's not too giant of a stretch from irrigation. So thinking creatively about your business, what other industries might you serve that are kind of branch you into it? Like, for example, and I'm not recommending this one, I know nothing about it, but what about indoor plant care? Think about what are the segments, what are the niches, striping parking lots. Where can you go with this and find the little segments of the industry that are more easily something you can get into and dominate, something that then can, once you expand in those services, that can get you in the door with other companies, maybe by selling that service. So maybe you couldn't sell lawn care to the company, but you could get into the company by indoor plant care, and then ultimately you get the outdoor care too. Those are solely examples, but I think that's the big concept to be thinking about, is looking for the most profitable segments of the industry, using your core business, your mowing, bush trimming, things of that sort, to cover your costs, to build the business and hopefully turn those into nice profit centers, and then generate your higher profit margins by really focusing on specific segments of the industry, becoming the best at those segments. So I think that's where a lot of the big money is in the industry. It's not just copying what everybody else is doing and just providing a bunch of generic services. It's about thinking about the best segments and focusing on those and ignoring the segments that aren't as profitable. So that's the way I would handle that, and that's the way I would look at it. All right, the last question, I'm going to try not to say, so the last question here, I'm going to try to be quick about it. Basically, I'm spending just about everything. I am making a living off very little, and I'm putting it back in the business. I keep telling myself to stop, but I can't. My question is, when will it really pay off big? I feel like I'm married to the lawn care business. So this is a challenging one to answer because I don't know all the details. I would say a couple things here. Without knowing the details, this is really hard to answer. So my take on the business after being in it for my first 2 years, I was already doing well financially when I started the lawn care business because I had the cleaning business and I've been in the computer industry for a long time. So I already had kind of a base of income and revenue and was building some businesses already. So in my mind, I was already doing well. I wanted to do, of course, better, but I was already doing good when I got into lawn care. So lawn care was just another business for me. And so after being in the lawn care business for a couple of years, I have to say I was not impressed. I actually thought about getting out of it a couple times. And the things I hated about it was getting paid at the end of the month, the float on money, the driving from job to job, the challenges with the employees, labor problems, probably all the things you could rattle off as problems as well. And I don't know, we weren't that big after a couple of years, maybe $250,000 a year at the end of 2 years. So I was really the first couple of years we grew very slow. We've had a lot of our growth in the last 3 years. And it's City Turf. My lawn care company has always been a side company for me. And so after about that end of the second year, third year, really started getting serious with it in terms of figuring out what we were going to do. And most of our growth has just happened in 3 years, and it's accelerating now. My point is that, and the reason I just said all that was that after a couple of years in the business, I remember thinking at times I was pretty excited about the business because I had big plans for it, and so I wanted to be in it. But at the same time, looking at the numbers, looking at the money coming out of the business, looking at it only being about $250,000 in size, it didn't really get me very excited. I was more in love with the business than I was pleased with the results of the business. I was more in love with the idea of what it could become. But it couldn't become what I envisioned without making some serious changes. So where I'm going with this is, my general take on the lawn care business was not a good one. I thought, this isn't really worth it. And I tried different things and I tried different models. And really, when I got serious and we started learning how to market properly, and I started working on the web marketing, when I started only accepting credit cards, when we started firing clients, when we started being kind of not ruthless, but being sort of ruthless with getting rid of employees that weren't good and really working hard to find great employees. We have worked so hard to build our team, and our team is what makes us different. We have an awesome team. And so we have worked really hard to put this group together, really, really hard. And it's kind of like laying the foundation when you're building your house. If you get the team right, then the future is almost unlimited. But if you get the foundation or the team wrong, your business will be a nightmare for the rest of your life. And I think a lot of companies, like, I don't want to sell my lawn care company. I'm building Service Autopilot. If somebody brought us bazillions of dollars tomorrow, we wouldn't sell it. My point is that we're building something to keep. And so a lot of guys end up selling companies because they hate their companies. They hate their teams. They hate what they've built. and it drives them crazy. They're bored, they're worn out. And so the key to building something sustainable that's going to be around 10, 20, 30 years that you're going to live with and get a stream of income off and not sell is putting together people that you like to work with that are competent, top players. And that really, in my mind, as I've progressed in business, is really the most important thing. It's the team is more important than almost anything else. The money will follow, the profits will follow, the everything will follow if you have the right people. If you have the wrong people, it'll be a nightmare forever, and there's no fixing it. So I don't know at all that would be the problem here. I'm just saying that at the end, the team is the core. So we really got serious about the team several years ago. I'm very serious about it at Service Autopilot. That would be one of the most important things to look at. So if the company's not doing well, if the profits aren't there, you've got to look at pricing. You've got to look at unproductive time, drive time. You've got to look at how you're bidding the jobs. But you've also got to look at the people that you're bringing on. And in my mind, and I've got something I'm working on that in a couple months I'll release this. I've been writing it for a while now as I've had time, and it's this concept of pricing. You can't be the best company if you have the lowest prices. You've got to have mid to upper pricing. And I would argue towards the upper end of the pricing, because unless you price at the upper end of the market, you can't hire the upper end employees. If you don't have the upper end employees, then your life's miserable. And so pricing is usually one of the biggest problems. Serving too big of a market is usually one of the biggest problems. Trying to be everything to everybody. And then as a result, you end up with the wrong employees as well and the wrong clients. So those are the big areas I'd focus. So if I was going in to take over a company, the very first thing I would look at would be the pricing, what we're selling back into our clients. Can we sell more to the existing clients? How is our pricing? I would adjust the pricing as fast as I could. And then any employees that are dragging down the team, I would let them go immediately at almost any cost. Because just one employee in a group of 10 can drive the whole team down. It can lower everybody's productivity and make everybody miserable. And one guy that doesn't show up, that gets to come back tomorrow and be part of the company, everybody else sees that. And the guys that work really hard look at the guy that keeps getting, let go, or not let go, but keeps getting forgiven for all of his excuses and trouble. And they're like, well, why should I work so hard? And it hurts the morale of everybody. So I would look at those areas. I would look at the profitability of the jobs. So to give you an exact example, so in 2004, I had a company that I won't go into the whole story, but I ended up with this company completely on a whim, and built the company up to, I don't know what we built it up to, 300-400 grand, maybe 400 grand, maybe somewhere in that area. I had 3 trucks. I know that much. And so I had enough guys for each of the trucks. I had 3 trucks and all the equipment, and it was mainly commercial and it was some residential. I hated the business. It was probably netting, I don't know, 35 grand a year. I don't remember the exact numbers now, but for me, 35 grand a year at the time was almost a complete waste of my time. And so I was just thinking, this isn't worth it at all. So what we did is we went through and we fired all the customers we didn't like, all the customers that would complain all the time, customers that we didn't make the most amount of money on, got rid of all the worst employees, got rid of all the worst equipment and trucks, and just took the whole business down to 1 truck, 1 crew, and I think it was about $250,000 or maybe $225,000 in accounts. And for the next couple of years, we took over 6 figures out of that business. Like literally took it out and put it in the bank. And it wasn't a long-term sustainable business because we were investing no time back in the business. I was literally doing nothing with the business. We were just taking money out of it. So long-term, it couldn't have lasted. Those kind of profit margins couldn't have held up, but they did for several years. And that was a lesson that I learned years ago about really taking the business and getting rid of everything you hate about it. And you might take a step back for a period of time financially, but just go through and literally make a list of everything you hate, all the problems, and start figuring out how you can chop it at. Get rid of it, get rid of those employees, get rid of those accounts, and then figure out who your very, very best accounts are, who your very, very best employees are, where do those employees live, who are their friends, where do they hang out, Where do your best clients live? Who are their friends? Where do they hang out? What kind of homes do they live in? What kind of cars do they drive? You model your clients, you model your employees, you go to those areas and you find more. You go get the people you want. And it's hard and it's not easy and it's painful and all that, but that is how I believe you build a good business. You kind of destroy what you've got that's not working, and you systematically destroy the parts of it that aren't working as you identify them, and then you go figure out what's working. You look at it, you model it, and you go figure out how you can find more of that, and you go build more of that, and you ignore and block out everything else. You can't serve everybody. You can't make everybody happy. It's all impossible. You'll always be a mediocre company if you try to, so you got to really zero in and focus on who's your ideal client, who's your ideal employee, how do you want to do business. If the client doesn't like it, doesn't want to do business with you that way, then that's fine. That doesn't mean you don't owe them anything. They can go work with another company that does operate exactly how they want. There's plenty of clients out there, so my point is that you're not supposed to try to be everything to everybody. You're supposed to be great for the people that you can be great for. And the other people that don't identify you as being great, or you don't completely serve their need, they can go elsewhere, and that's perfectly okay. And so that's what that's what I would do if I was going into a business trying to fix it. I would tear it apart like that, and I would look for the opportunities, the best clients. And one of the first things I would do is I'd find those best clients, go get more, and I would sell everything I could possibly sell back to those clients I've already got. And so I don't know what else to say, not knowing the exact scenario, but those are a couple concepts I would think about. So I used the example earlier that I didn't find the business to be overly exciting in the beginning, but I do now. And the company is worth a lot of money to me and will be only worth more year after year. And that's because we've got rid of a lot of the things we hated about the business. And we're a long ways away from making it a perfect business. We've still got problems. We've still got challenges. We've still got, we're not hitting all the margins we want to hit. We're working on stuff all the time. It's not perfect. It's really good, but it's not perfect. There's a lot of improvement to still be had, and we're working on that, making it better all the time. And that's what a business is. You don't just get it to a perfect state and then say, well, for the next 7 years, I'm just going to collect a check. You're always tweaking. You're always working on it. But at some point, you get it to a point where it's really good, and then you're just making it better and better and reacting to market economic changes. And so that's the concept I use here is identify what you hate and what you like and go get more of each. Go get less of what you hate and go get more of what you like and focus on it that way. So I hope that helps you. So I'm gonna call it quits here for this episode or this call, and I will see you again next month. Thanks.